Meet 6 young people doing great things to tackle poverty, inequality, exclusion, and crisis in Jamaica. They're part of teams leading game-changing solutions and valued partners in UNDP's Ready, Set, Great Youth Development Showcase 2020 and 2021. These are their stories.
My name is Janelle Tomlinson, co-founder of Girls Care and Young People for Climate Action, Jamaica.
I'm Eleanor Taralong from the Jamaica Climate Change Youth Council.
When we think about Jamaica, we recognize that there are so many communities that rely heavily on natural resources for their sustenance. So there are farmers, there are fishers, whether they're just individuals living in rural communities. And within the context of climate change, this seeks to, exacerbate and kind of proliferate a lot of these challenges persons are already facing. So we look at farmers, for example, a lot of them already have minimal resources, and in the face of climate change, when there's a drought, when there's intense rainfall, when there are issues with landslides and things like that, we recognize that persons, risks and their exposure to these things become heightened because, for one, with a drought, there's less crops within the household, so less money, so less available resources for the family, for the livelihoods, for the farm. Think about an incident of a tropical storm, for example. We recognize that there are so many houses that end up being damaged, so many farms end up being damaged, and again, this has an impact not only on the farm or the house itself, but on the pocket of these individuals. And so climate change has been, worsening a lot of the situations these persons who are currently in poverty live in, and we can anticipate that will happen well off into the future, especially as these hazards and these challenges become even worse.
When we talk about climate change, every single issue that we have in society, climate change actually makes it worse. So all of our social problems, crime, poverty, etc., climate change really exacerbates those issues. So it's always persons who are most vulnerable, so the poor, persons living in rural areas who are most affected by climate change. Climate change directly impacts people's lives and livelihoods, so they lose their livelihood, farmers lose their crops, fishers aren't able to, feed their families the same way. And then also in terms of reacting to severe weather events, so flooding, hurricanes, that sort of things. It is the poorest in society who don't have the funds or the resources to really be able to build back or even protect their homes in these severe weather events. So we see the kind of correlation between climate change and poverty.
When I think about my organization and the work that we are doing with youth and climate change, we recognize that rural youth are particularly vulnerable because their families, their friends, colleagues rely so heavily on, natural resources. And so we work with young women across the Caribbean in particular, as well as rural youth, to be able to empower, educate, create spaces for knowledge exchange and sharing, training, mentorship, and just ensuring that each one can teach one and each one can reach one, and also ensuring that whatever information we have, we're able to disseminate to them so that they can have an impact in the small spaces they are, whether their communities, their homes, their schools, and being able to impart that knowledge in different spheres and spaces.
So at the Jamaica Climate Change Youth Council, something that we say is that we are the generation that must live climate change, and also we are the last generation that can make a difference. So what we do is that we try to give young people the skills, so we do training programs, that sort of thing, give them the skills to really be able to do climate action within their own spaces, whether it's their own communities, their own schools, etc. We have done a number of projects. So one of the projects that we just closed out is in St. Thomas. We went into a community called Albion Heights. We put in solar home systems, solar street lamps, a recycling program. So what we're trying to do is really give people solutions that they need for life, but to do it in an environmentally sustainable way. So that's how we try to, bring climate change really home to people when they see the effects on their daily life and small changes that they can make personally to contribute to climate change adaptation and mitigation.
When we think about green jobs, they are especially important because, they create an opportunity for sustainability while ensuring that nobody's left behind, while ensuring that, we're creating jobs that are sustainable, that are accessible, and that promote equity. In particular, we think about youth, we recognize that jobs in the field of renewables are particularly on the rise. in 2019, there were some 11.5 million jobs within the green economy. And as we look to 2021, we had seen where there were at least 500,000 more jobs created within that space. And so we see where there's an increase in the number of jobs within the renewable space. And these jobs are quite critical for, promoting sustainability, for promoting, green and clean, because when we look at what a just transition is, we recognize that the green economy and green jobs, renewables, fall exactly within that line. And so with young people that are so innovative, that are into, technology and how we can utilize resources for, bettering our economies, we recognize that the renewable energy space is one that has peaked out of interest, that has opportunity for creating that green transition that we're looking for, and also, encouraging and promoting the engagement of youth. STEM is something that we're looking towards, and so it creates the opportunity for both young men and women to be able to, be engaged and be able to be empowered and educated while still being able to create a job and a livelihood for themselves.
I think young people really have to think about everything that they do more holistically. So what are the long-term effects or repercussions or consequences of this job that I'm going to employ? A lot of it is going to be what we call ecopreneurs, which is entrepreneurship, but in an eco-friendly way. I know a young person who is keeping bees, so that is a ecopreneurship opportunity for you to make some money, but also do it in a sustainable way. I think that we're really innovative and we're not afraid to try things. Thinking outside of the box, just looking around your community, doing some research to see what avenues you can get involved in that, yes, make money for you, put money in your pocket, but also have a beneficial effect in the long term on society. My call to action for young people is to get involved, whether it's through your community group, whether it is through an organization like the JCCYC, or whether through one of UNDP programs. Get involved, engage your leaders, whether it's on a community level, a national level. I think as young people, we kind of feel maybe afraid sometimes, or we don't know how to approach those in power. But it's very important for us to have these conversations to make sure that things that we care about are on the agenda. And in terms of getting involved in green and blue jobs, you also need to pressure these people to create space for this sort of green and blue economy to really grow.
So when we think about Ready, Reset, Recharge of 2020 and some of the key recommendations for youth, there are three in particular that I think are quite important. The first speaks to the engagement of youth in climate change related campaigns. Young people are at the heart of innovation, and so we want to make sure that whatever messages are being tailored are for them and by them. The second one speaks to increased collaboration and communication among youth groups. And so we see the importance of, power in numbers. When we work together, we're able to, proliferate the kind of messaging and the kind of energy that we want within the climate space. And so groups working together is a key finding from that I think we want to reiterate. And finally, the creation and, the promotion of resilient infrastructure is another one that is quite important, especially when we think about green jobs and how we are going to create additional opportunities for young people to get into that space. And so the three key takeaways: resilient infrastructure through the creation of green jobs, youth groups working together more to amplify the work that is being done, and finally, ensuring that youth are engaged in climate change campaigns to create greater buy-in.